I am Tom, founder of Demand Genius and host of Demand Geniuses. This show is all about equipping B2B marketers with everything they need to convert demand to revenue. So please hit the follow button, it makes me really happy, and then enjoy the show. Okay, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Demand Geniuses. I'm going to get straight into it and introduce this week's guest, which is Lisa Vecchio. So, before we begin to who you are, Lisa, hello, welcome.
Hello, great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining on a pretty miserable Friday afternoon. We have the graveyard slot, so for everyone listening, if we don't sound that sensible, it's because we're not feeling that sensible. But thank you for joining me on a Friday afternoon. I guess before we get going, do you want to maybe just give me a little bit of a quick background into you? I know looking at your kind of CV, some very interesting companies on there, Hootsuite, Aircall. So tell us a bit about you.
Sure. Believe it or not, 20 years in marketing and B2B, and speaking to different marketers, not everyone ends up in this lovely profession that we're in on purpose, but I am one of those ones who actually built my career out of like passion and purpose. So from a young age was very culturally curious about how I can help spread the good love of businesses through marketing and do what I enjoy, which is like networking, influencing, bringing people together. And so 9 years, one company in edtech in the US, and then moved out to Australia. Always knew I wanted to work in international markets. Came to the UK 10 years ago, started working for some really early startups, getting to like their first million. Then I went the opposite direction and went to Expedia for their B2B enterprise business. And probably for the last 5 years or so have been in that kind of like mid-market scale. So you mentioned Hootsuite, Aircall, a French unicorn. And now I'm in a company called VEED. We're an AI video creation and editing platform. I've been there for about a year. And being in the AI space, marketing to marketers again, I feel like my Ikigai has come back together.
I love that. I was listening to a podcast about Ikigai very recently, but let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like geographical switching around there, which sounds like quite a fun way to live your life. But I guess from a marketing perspective, how different is it working in the US versus Australia versus the UK?
I think with anything, few similarities, quite a few differences. I mean, we can slice and dice this so many different ways. We can talk about how they do business. We can talk about the fact that, from a, I guess like funding perspective, there's different markets and how they operate. But also I think like how you go to market, and like, I think the message here is like, it's not a one size fits all kind of game. When you kind of work in international markets, you need to think about not just localization, but cultural relevancy, market maturity, different set of competitors, and adapt your strategy accordingly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then one question that I always like to ask, I always think is really interesting, is like, is there a step along that career that you would say has been the most formative for you in terms of, I guess, your own thinking and progression? Because I think often people can point to one.
Yeah, I would say like when I was at Wiley, like in the start of my career, like because I was just genuinely so curious about like traveling and cultures, I really put myself in a position to work like in an international company with the other markets. And that meant that like I was putting my hand up to do like the late night phone calls, or like when we'd all come together for like global sales meetings, like I'd be leading those sessions with them. And so when I was like, you know what, I want change, I want to move abroad, it was really natural for them to say, I'll take someone from the US HQ and move them out to Australia. And saying yes and being brave and like, starting my life over like in my late 20s was like deliberate, but also like put me on this path for all of my future roles to be like the international person, right? To be like a really attractive candidate for global companies, but then also being able to bring a lot of value from having been working for US based companies or smaller subsidiaries of a US company. So I think the deliberate centering yourself in like your goal, but then also like following through with what you set out to do is kind of like what shaped a big part of like my brand as a marketer.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting in that, I think, to dig into a bit is what you said about the time that preceded it, where it sounds like there was a lot of, it's not as simple as you're either given the opportunity or it's not. It's something you went and sought out by going out of your way to do the tough late night calls and all of the stuff that, because like I've done it before, and working across time zones is hard. Like, what would your advice be because that's a difficult thing to do. If you're a marketer out there that maybe wants to go and experience that, like, what would your advice be?
Yeah. And I think it doesn't have to just be working the international markets. It's anything like you're an SEO and you want to become a social media manager or something. It's like making space in your time to, outside of your current job scope or whatever those lanes are, to go like build the relationships with the people who are already in those roles or key stakeholders for you getting, space in those roles, volunteering for extra projects. Maybe you don't work for an international company yet. So like that opportunity just isn't realistic. So thinking about how you leverage your network to maybe have conversations with people who, are in your same position to learn like what skills are needed, et cetera.
And not waiting for it to fall in your lap, which I think
you can't. No one can wait. We don't have privilege anymore. Like the pace of innovation and all these companies and like, the death of growth at all costs. It's like, you want something, you got to go out and make it happen.
I think that's very true though. And actually more true, not just for big changes, but it's more of a survival skill set now than ever. I was down at Brighton SEO the other week and it was really good. And there's a lot of great stuff happening there. But one tone that really frustrates me actually is there's a lot of SEO folks who are very protective and wary at the moment. And there's this little atmosphere of AI is this mean thing that's coming to get us and how do we stop it? And it's really frustrating because it's like, there's no point. It's here. Like you have to work out how to carve out your role. And it's the same skill set that you just described that would make you very well suited to do that.
I mean, what's happening with AI at the moment? I mean, as you just said, like if the sentiment is like, we'll just ignore it and pretend like it's going to go away. I mean, you're not future-proofing your career. And I was thinking about this last night when I was flying back from actually SEMrush, their big conference. So in the SEO space, but also branching out into like influencer and like all these other areas, was like, I constantly feel like I either have FOMO, like I'm not quick enough, or imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know if I can do it. And I think the reality is like, that's a healthy way to be thinking about. Like we're going through a huge industrial kind of revolution equivalent, like at the moment. And if you're just going to put your blinders on, I'd be really wary, even for young people who are earlier in their career, to not kind of take advantage of becoming an AI native at the start of this journey. Would just be really disadvantaged for them, I think, in the long term.
You just described something I feel every day, which is that you have this spectrum of FOMO to imposter syndrome. And I always get there's so much noise. And it's something you get a lot as a founder, but also a marketer, because you have to be on social media as part of your job. There's so many people telling you how you should be doing, how quickly you should be growing. As a founder, if you're not, code is a commodity now, you should be able to churn out features every day. But then, your experience day in, day out, that produces really shit products. And so you're always trying to balance your experiences with what everyone's telling you. And it's so noisy. It's really tough.
It's so noisy. And I think because like being in the AI space, working like in AI video, for example, like you're on social, you're trying to like, it's probably not a healthy thing to say, take a break. So go on social. Cause actually that's just like another distraction, but like, and all you're seeing is other people's content. And you're like, that's a great idea. Or how do I, marketers selling to marketers, you're always thinking about like, what's the next brand thing you can do, or like, a way to kind of present your content on social. And I've been talking about it more and more, just how exhausting, like you have to give yourself the brain space. You also have to give yourself time for yourself, like whether that's meditation, yoga, walks, sports, like, and I think how fast things are moving, like it just would be unhealthy for people to not prioritize themselves right now. So I hope you do as a founder and as someone who's overwhelmed by all the kind of keeping up.
I mean, that varies week on week. I always say being a founder is like an absolute roller coaster. I joke that one day you feel like an entrepreneur, the next you feel unemployed. And you just kind of oscillate in a very unhealthy way between those two things. Let's think, so we've already gone way off track here, but I find it interesting. Like, let's say I was kind of someone, young marketer in Lisa's team who maybe is struggling with this and wants to understand like how do I carve out my space in this world? Like from a mentor, in a mentoring type conversation, what advice would you give them in terms of how they should adapt to the kind of AI native requirements and where to look so that there's not an overwhelming amount of noise, but they can actually act on the insights that they get?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because there's some accountability needed for the individual. There's some accountability needed on myself as, let's say, a mentor or a leader for that person, and then the organization as a whole. So, we talked about you don't ask, you don't get, you going out and creating opportunities for yourself. Like there is a responsibility for the individual to be curious, ask questions, and just start experimenting. So whether they're spending time in communities with like other marketers like themselves, or scrolling through LinkedIn, they're taking advantage of like the millions of free courses that are out there. Like they just need to get started. I think then as a leader, I'm already thinking about how are we going using AI to improve like efficiency and productivity? And then how can I actually foster an environment for the team to experiment in a safe space so that it can kind of free up their thinking? Agents, right, are like the name of the game at the moment. And so like, how can we create safe spaces to get people hands-on with some of these tools? We're hosting a marketing hackathon in a few weeks, right? Because I feel like that's my responsibility, like as someone who just wants to foster better marketing across the marketing industry, to bring marketers together to play and have fun and learn about OpenAI or N8N or Lovable and vibe coding, but for the role of, whatever they're trying to accomplish, in this case, like content for social.
Yeah, well, and I'm looking forward to coming to that hackathon. I think before we get into the meat of what I want to talk to you about here, and for people listening, this kind of relationship and this idea started when I listened to Lisa do a great talk at a very swanky LinkedIn office in central London, on using great office and a great, like, having your own like theater within your office is just so cool. But I want to build a lot of this episode around AI video creation and how people can use that. But I think it's also interesting to talk a little bit about marketing at VEED as well as just
absolutely
that area. And give us a little bit of context on that, because I know that's changed a little bit, and you've been making big investments in brand recently, right? I guess help us understand why that shift and just what the shift has been.
Yeah, well, so I think first of all, like, as a business, and like the game's changed, right? With the way that SEO is, traditional search is on decline. LLMs are there kind of disrupting things. And we grew our business on organic demand. Like, what a privilege, right? To be able to have like one of like these ultimate case studies of what good SEO looks like. We actually built our product around existing demand. People were searching for, I need a video compressor tool, I need automatic subtitles, I need all these kind of video components, and we built them and they came. But I think the world that we're living in now is we can't just expect that demand to come knocking on our door. We actually have to create new demand, and through that is creating more top of funnel awareness opportunities. And so, we've done a few experiments this year, and I think, most marketers can probably appreciate the frustration of trying to convince a CEO to invest in brand or not over kind of emphasize the attribution model that we all know is flawed. And so I think, you start with data, and you start with your typical kind of like, hey, 95/5 rule, or, these are the reasons we're not growing so fast, to kind of get buy-in and engagement on brand. The first thing that we did, really started with like diversifying channel mix and trying to get into the enterprise space, was like our first trade show. And it sounds pretty basic. And as like the marketer on the team was like, I don't want to like do a big investment. Like, let's just kind of like book the bare bones stand and just test this out at this channel. And actually went like, that's not true to like our brand identity. Like, we're a bold brand. We take risks as part of who we are in our DNA. So like, go big or go home. And we had this like bright green booth. We thought about how to activate customers with like a digital avatar booth. And like, the lesson there was like, we got the CEO involved. Like, he was there experiencing people being like, oh my God, like, that's so cool. What's happening in there? Like, all these meaningful conversations that he was like, we should do this again. And what else can we do that can kind of compound this? So we did a big brand campaign in New York this year, which was like a combination of like out of home and social, where we leveraged real creators. It was really clever. I can't take credit for it, but the idea was like, their faces were on the billboard. They were then like, we brought them to NYC, and they were like hunting the subway system to find their billboard. And then naturally they shared that out on social, and people who knew them shared it out on social. And it was like an important moment for us to actually kind of, gain some visibility in a market we didn't have loads of. Where this is leading to is like, all of this compounded to the fact that like, we've realized that actually, if we can increase branded search, as a leading indicator for growth, and we can correlate that to revenue growth, we're at the point where I feel so lucky that our CEO is saying like, let's strip out the attribution model and let's just focus on reach and frequency. And so the change that you're referring to is like, look, we're in the AI game. We're shipping a new feature now, like every week, if not every day. And so we don't have the luxury to take 3 months or 6 months to build a campaign plan, and then everyone does their little bit. I think part of like upskilling with AI and other things is we're all becoming a bit more full stack marketers. And we're thinking about speed to market as probably like one of our core KPIs. And so the marketing team at VEED is no longer like a silo of this person doing demand gen over here and PR and then social. We're all orchestrated around a moment in market, which is social first. And the goal there is reach and frequency. So it's a really exciting time. Like we're still learning from the data and learning kind of what works. But like as we're repositioning ourselves as not just a video editor, but like an AI video creation tool, it's important that we're like in the moment with kind of the movement that's happening, out there, where conversations are happening, where our customers are. Does that make sense?
It makes a load of sense. I've written about five questions down as we were talking. So this is going to go for a while. But there's one thing that I want to go back to, which is you said that the CEO said that let's strip out the attribution model. But there's two really interesting things in that. One is the CEO said like this is coming from top down, and you have buy-in from executives, which is normally the exact opposite of how this stuff works, right?
That's why I said I feel really lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've been lucky twice, right? A load of organic demand to drive the initial growth, and then now you've got this. It's you're making a lot of marketers jealous right now. But also, you said strip out the attribution model. Like, was that necessary? Was it necessary?
No, and I probably said that a bit too like laissez-faire. I mean, the attribution model 100% still exists. Like we're in the middle of 2026 planning, and like what are we looking at? Like all the data points, right? So I think what when you're using organic search and you're in the game of like not dropping links anymore, right? Because that's going to limit your content reach. When we're leveraging creators and influencers to like create on our behalf, and again, kind of in a linkless world where we're focusing more on impressions and engagements. That's not showing up in the traditional sense that it would if we were putting, or when we were putting 99% of our budget towards performance and, paid search. A lot of that paid search budget is now being moved to these other channels. Saying all of that, we do use an MMM model. So that MM model is what's directionally telling us that your organic channels and your influencer channels are more cost effective than what you were doing with traditional paid search. So let's look at testing the shift here. So I'd say it's a blended approach, but what we are looking at the moment is that correlation. And there's some regression modeling stuff happening around the impressions that we're seeing on search, the influencers that we're partnering with, the branded search lift, and then revenue coming in.
Yeah, well, because that's what I'm always interested. I'm always of the belief that like measure everything, but don't ever treat anything other than revenue as your kind of North Star, right? That's where attribution can go wrong because people start optimizing for the attribution model rather than the thing it's meant to attribute to. But is it, I think it must be quite a tough thing as you switch towards a more brand approach to have that kind of sounds quite sophisticated attribution in place, but avoid people becoming a slave to it. Like, how do you create the right behaviors internally whereby people stay focused on the right stuff and not just the things that they can prove via that route?
To be honest, I think we're like living, like I listened to Elena from Lovable speak the other day, and she was saying something that was really interesting. She was like, we're launching so quickly, marketing still figuring out how to keep up, and how to rewire themselves. And I was chatting to her afterwards because it wasn't a dig at marketing. It's just that like how we've always done things doesn't apply in the world where new AI models and new AI features are launching on a daily basis. So I think that to answer your question, it's less around like, we don't have an option not to be moving in this direction because it's so fast. It's more about how do we free up time and space and bandwidth and mental capacity to be looking at the analysis, like, because we're just like, we've become this machine now that we need to pull ourselves out and keep sense checking. We still don't know, right? This is only like a couple months of like a shift, of like, are these the right signals? Should we be looking at other signals? Should we be trying other tests? Is there a different combination of this formula? So, I think maybe 6 months ago, the team was like a bit resistant to moving this way, to like a bit, hesitant to think of like this, the way that we've taken this social first approach. Especially we've like also looked at like changed our channel mix. Like we're leveraging X in a way that like, wasn't even part of our channel strategy a year ago. And so now though, like when we're looking at the landscape, looking at competitors, look at what's working for other people who are moving just as quickly as we are, it's kind of like we're all in on this, and let's make sure that we like give people more the space to reflect, because it's like, it's chaos in the most positive way I can say it. It's chaos.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like so we say you have patience and you have buy-in from leadership to go down this slightly more long-term route. A lot of people probably don't have that, and even if they manage to go down this route, it's really important that in those first few months they can show clear signals that it's working. So you said branded search is the kind of headline KPI that you're shooting towards. Talk us through what the different leading KPIs are that you've seen in the meantime that give you confidence this is working. And like, yeah, what are the checkpoints along the way to seeing branded search improve?
Yeah, and like I say, it's still early doors, but I mean, just the switch in channel strategy, from shifting the budget, looking at what channels we're going to be targeting social first, leveraging influencers as a core growth channel. I mean, even the content that we're creating has completely changed. And so what we're seeing is, when I look at something like X or even LinkedIn and I compare previous posts that we've done to the posts that we've been creating the last couple of weeks and months, I mean, we went from like maybe a couple hundred, impressions, maybe 1,000 or two to like 100,000, 200,000. And so what we're seeing is like, if we get this formula right and we're getting the reach, the traffic to our website is just exponentially increasing. And when we split that out between brand and non-brand, the non-brand stuff is still primarily being driven by search and, trying to get rankings in the LLMs, where all of this brand lift that we're seeing is coming from that social first and influencer approach. So that's kind of, probably the starting point. Then we've also looked at layering on paid social on top of that, right? And so we're getting much more cost-effective CAC, experimenting with different ad formats, and then all of a sudden we're able to have better targeting. And when we look at layering that on top, we see another kind of spike, right? So as you isolate and then add and then kind of just keep experimenting with the different mix, that's what we're learning from, basically.
Yeah, well, I'm always a big proponent of much more kind of organic strategies, I suppose. But I think one thing people often overlook is the halo effect that you see on literally every metric across go-to-market starts to improve. So even if you are quite heavily reliant on paid, that doesn't mean that brand shouldn't be a priority, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing, before we get onto another topic, you mentioned one thing in there, which is that you've been leveraging influencers very heavily, and a lot of your strategy has always been quite social dependent because it's just natural for what you do, right? You're showing off your video capabilities. Do you worry about reliance on social and other people's algorithms, and do you ever think about a need to kind of build up an owned audience, so to speak?
So I think that's actually what we're doing in this recent shift. So up until this point, influencer was probably one of our most cost-effective acquisition channels, other than YouTube, realistically. And a lot of that was influencers' own created, content. We'd give them a brief, they'd go out and create their stuff and amplify it, and we'd see amazing results from it. But actually, it's becoming more of a blended approach where it's not just their own content, but their interaction with our branded content and on our own brand channels, where we're actually seeing, increased reach and more kind of, I guess the collaborative approach is not just keeping it to like create your stuff. And then this depends on what channel it is. So on X, it's more like commenting and resharing rather than creating like own content, where on Instagram and TikTok, of course, that's like where they shine, right? So we want to give them that creative freedom. In terms of own channels as well, like CRM is a top performing channel for us as well. And I think as we kind of mature our own database and first party data, like that's still something like I'm not overlooking or dismissing in any sense of mean.
And when you say CRM as a channel, you mean kind of email?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, it's just probably our internal terminology. Yeah, I'm just talking about email and life cycle.
Got you. Okay. Makes sense. Super interesting. I'm conscious we've got about half an hour and still not even talked about what we were meant to talk about. Let's get on to that a bit. One thing, and this is what I found so interesting about the talk that you did the other week, was I was trying to apply it to our context. And we talk about FOMO. And one of the big places where I've always felt a lot of FOMO is like AI video creation. Can we be doing an awful lot more than we are? But I've struggled to apply it to my own context. So I guess what I really want to understand, I'm sure, well, in fact, I know from speaking to people, there's a lot of people out there that feel the same. So I want to get into like how we can practically, we being marketers as a whole, incorporate AI video into our strategy beyond isolated experiments. And I don't quite know where to start, but I guess maybe a good place is, what are the best examples you've seen of companies that do this really well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe before I go into those examples, I think there's two ways AI is, I think, like impacting video. And one is AI creation, meaning like you're generating like an AI generated content. And then also there's like AI editing. And I think what's interesting about both of those is like, it doesn't have to necessarily be in isolation. You may already be producing content for your social, and it's how you can like equip your team or people who are maybe like non-social editors or video people to go ahead and just like create content, even if it's not AI generated. It's just your talking head, you're creating a video for LinkedIn about, I don't know, the event you did the other day or a thought leadership piece. And you can actually like unlock so much more potential within your own organization to arm your team with some basic tools that they probably never had the confidence, going back to like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not a video editor, this isn't for me. And I just think it's important to start there, because for me, I'm a marketing generalist. I make the worst, like I am not, I'm not a designer. Like, you do not want to see my PowerPoint slides, let alone if I tried to like, I think like create a video. I'm like pushing more video out than I ever have before. And it maybe if you're like a deep video expert and you're a motion designer, you're going to go, well, that's pretty crap, Lisa. But you know what? If you're a marketer who just wants to like level up and create more content, like, I don't think it's that bad, because I did it in 20 minutes in my living room and I didn't need help from my team. And I'm talking about some basic things like, you know, automatically adding subtitles to your video, having your brand kit locked in so that you can add your logo or do stuff in your colors, using something like edit with script, where like it literally takes your transcript and it'll delete all your ums and ahs and you know, like word silences, and all of a sudden like you went from having a pretty like video to like something that's polished and shareable. So I just wanted to start there. But when we talk about AI generation, I think it's interesting because there's a lot of tools out there at the moment. There's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of people are probably asking the same question that you've just asked me or are asking each other, is like, when are we going to start seeing this in our day to day? And I think we're still kind of at the early point of that, you know, that hump of before it's just becomes the norm. And, you know, people are cautious of AI slop and just pushing stuff out, and we still have to balance the human and the AI. So to answer your question, you know, I think video ads is a great way that people are using AI generated content to test and experiment. So, you know, maybe they're creating different variations of an AI generated ad, and then they're changing the color or the character or the headline, and they're able to get quick feedback on, you know, is this the right message or is this the right, you know, content before they go ahead and scale it. And maybe then they'll go hire an agency to go do like full production on it. But it's a great way to get, I think, market feedback before your ad spend. People are using it like avatars. You know, avatars have been around for the last couple of years. They've been used more in, let's say, like training and development, like for internal comms. We launched our own model called Fabric a couple of months ago, but, you know, you've seen probably like, you know, Sora come out from OpenAI, and VO come out from Google, and then there's Kling and Minimax, and, you know, there's so many of them on a daily basis. And it's funny because when we launched Fabric, which is like you can upload any image, like a talking head, that's what it's for. It's to make any image talk. A lot of people have told us they're leveraging it for their CEO to do internal comms. They're uploading a photo of their CEO with his voice clip. And, you know, it's can be sometimes so difficult to get the CEO to like send the message for the campaign. I know you're a CEO, but like, you know, for a campaign or like to post the thing on LinkedIn, they've actually been like experimenting with that. So like unlocking people who might be camera shy or not have like the bandwidth to actually produce content. We're using it for like themed campaigns as well. Like it's Halloween this week. We produced a lot of content around it. We've got Black Friday coming up. And so we've also, you know, leveraged that to create social first content that doesn't, you know, that can be very human and real, but generated through our team. So those are just a couple examples, but I kind of bring, whether you're generating or editing, everything back to like, what's the job to be done on social, and like, what's the right format to achieve that job? People are telling us that they want talking head video to promote their business, to educate their customers, to, you know, create awareness for their brand. And when you kind of break things down into like the jobs to be done, you then can think about, okay, what, like you would with any other piece of content, what are the right formats? What's the stuff that's going to resonate? And then you can test and experiment. I guess the final point I'll make here is like, why would people want to use Gen AI video? And I think ultimately people don't know where to start sometimes. They don't have the budget. Like we talk about customer interviews where you'll spend 5-10 grand to fly someone out and go to someone's office where, you could likely ask them interview questions, get them to record it, upload a picture of their head, and get those sound bites potentially at a higher quality than a bad Zoom recording, for example. So, if it's going to save you money and help you get to market quicker, like this is the stuff that's worth experimenting with and finding the right use case for your brand. And maybe we're still in the I'm not sure yet, but just have fun with it, because what we're also seeing is a lot of the Gen AI content, like even on my own socials, because it's different, it's getting engagement. I created a Halloween video, or when we launched Fabric, of all the different use cases for marketing. Like you can do it for podcast recordings. The example I want to give is we don't have a social creator for our Instagram at the moment. I've got the post live on LinkedIn this morning, and we're actually experimenting with creating AI influencers using our tool to help us get content out quicker. It's going to be a test. It's going to look really real, but why can't we use them to do the explainer and then match that with some motion graphics to, create social first content?
Quite a few things I want to go back to in
Sure.
that. The main thing was you were saying it seems like it requires a lot of experimentation, and you said have fun with it. And I think that's what, when I was having a look through on LinkedIn, your videos you produced before this, and I can see that you're having a lot of fun just experimenting with stuff, creating it. But one thing I thought was, in terms of why that's hard for me to apply to my own context and what other people probably struggle with, is for you, and generally just a bit more context. Generally speaking, I think we're not that creative with top of funnel in B2B, right? It's how-tos and it's things like that. It's really, for you, you're selling a video AI platform. So you can create anything, and your job is to show off just the fact that you created it. It's a lot more, requires maybe more creativity. I find it very difficult to think, what are the open awareness type things that I can do in our world using that technology? And that's where I guess I'm like, have you seen companies that do a great job of that? Or have you seen processes or ways of working that people instill that help to create those kind of ideas and that kind of creativity?
Yeah, like a few. So I had a breakfast a couple weeks ago with like a bunch of like social leaders who work in newsrooms, right? Because like the news is changing, everything's social first, like in terms of how they're delivering their content. Like it's all like short snippets on social, and asking them about how they're using video. And naturally, they're a bit risk averse to like using avatar or like talking head generated content, because it's like the news, right? Like they don't necessarily want to replace their journalists in that sense. And I totally get that. So it's the AI editing piece that's really important for them, and how they can like equip everyone in their business to become journalists. But when it came to the generation stuff, what was important was B-roll, right? So for example, you're your company, you're trying to sell your service, and you may be creating a talking head video of yourself, giving a thought leadership piece, for example, or a how-to. You need to embed context, like contextual imagery to what you're talking about, because it'd be a pretty boring video if it's just you for a couple of minutes and like nothing changes on screen. So that's where you can actually prompt or feed it a script, which will automatically prompt for you images to back up what you're saying. Hey, I just was at an event in London this week, and all of a sudden your background changes, and there's like the image of the London Eye. And then, I was working with a client and we were talking about revenue, and maybe, I don't know, this sounds really corny, but like money, graph shoots up the screen. Like that's a very tactical, like practical example of like, in B2B marketing, like while we are talking head humans and the human part's really important, how people can use AI generated content. Another example is, again, like in training and development, or where you're having like a much longer video where you may be going into a demo. So you're demoing your product or service. You can use the AI generated, and like, I don't like to use the word avatar or actor, but like talking head that you generate. It could be a cartoon or a Muppet for all you want, or it could be you or your CEO, like I said, to just do the intro for the first 5 or 10 seconds, which is like, hey, I'm Tom. I'm here to show you how you can use my tool. Because you can edit the transcript to, like, you can edit the word and it'll regenerate the word for you. You can use that to like, use the same piece of content of like, let's say the demo, but always change the intro without having to re-record every time. Right. And that can be a bit fun experimental. I mentioned the ads thing as well, which I think is a very real use case also in B2B. And I know B2B has the stereotype of being boring. And yes, I am selling to marketers and I'm going, hey, I'm not a technical person. I'm not a creative like designer, but look what I did in a couple minutes. I also would encourage more B2B marketers to have fun with their marketing and create weird stuff because it's going to get engagement and reach. And like, what are your goals on social? Even to educate, you could do something like, why couldn't you be a vampire? Sending a Halloween message out to ask people to, next 24 hours, get your free demo in your inbox. Why not?
No, it's true. I mean, we just don't have the same culture though. And I think we approach advertising very differently to B2C, right? We think that advertising has to be about products and benefits, whereas B2C, they're very like, no, it's lifestyle, and they just show a happy person using the product. And everyone's like, oh, I want to be happy.
But I think this is like, I mean, I'm in B2B. I've been in B2B my whole career. And yeah, you need to be a bit of a risk taker. Like, I think we can all keep beating the drum that B2B is boring. It has to be about, value and benefits. And I do think depending on where you work, there's just some industries that's just not going to be able to take risks. But I think if you're in some industries in sales, for example, or selling, depending on who your audience is like, we're all humans. They want, like depending on where in the funnel you are as well, right? Like depending like, in terms of what content you're producing, it doesn't all have to be living up to the stereotype.
No, I'm not saying it's a good thing at all. I guess I think it's one of those funny things because I talk to so many people and they're all like, yeah, B2B, but it doesn't have to be boring. Everyone is frustrated by the same thing, yet we all fucking do it. So there's obviously something that sits between what we want to do and what we...
Well, and this goes back to, I guess, the brand building piece is like, how can you use data and examples of what other B2B brands are doing well to say to your boss or whoever it is, like, I'm going to just try something, trust me on this. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we won't do it again. Like, no one's going to die. So like, this is where I think, yes, we all know it doesn't have to be boring, but we also have to take more risks and try this stuff on to then prove the point. Otherwise, we're just in this land of beige forever. And then like, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm going to throw a controversial opinion at you, and we'll see whether you agree. I think we have to collaborate less because we've just been rebranding a lot of Demand Genius and going through that. And I was asking loads of people's opinion, and what I realized was that all of that opinion gathering, we were just rationalizing everything down to something that's really bland and doesn't offend anybody. No one loves it anymore, but no one really likes it. And so I was like, actually, I'm going to bin all that off and I'm going to do what I want to do. I think often creativity requires just empowering people to do it and accepting that. As the CMO, as the CEO, I might hate it. Oh, well, do it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. And I think it depends on what it is. Like getting input is valuable. Talking to customers is valuable, but customers sometimes don't even know what they want because it doesn't exist yet. Right. And so you have to blend. I'd say to your controversial point, I hear you. Literally this morning, we were on a deadline. The team sent me an image and I was like, oh, I don't really like the picture. Can you change it? Oh, what happened to the old font? And the one girl just got in the call and she's like, Lisa, I'm just going to tell you right now, unless there's like something's not going to work because of this. And I was like, oh, it's 100% objective. And again, it also wasn't helpful feedback. I'm like, I just want it to pop. Just make it pop a bit more. And she's just like, fuck off. Like, and you know what? My response after that was, guys, I'm going to leave you alone. I trust you. Pick whichever one you think is going to perform best. And then we'll go, because I was just being a pain in the butt and it was very subjective. And if I had 10 more other people in that Slack message, we would still be talking about it. And it's literally just an image going on a landing page to invite people to an event, and not anything anyone needs to lose sleep over. So I do agree with you around collaboration. I think there's a time and a place. I think we should leverage data to be insightful. We should talk to customers. We should talk to experts like, hey, if someone's a branding expert and they're telling you it really, really should be this way instead of that way, and they've got a strong reason for telling you that, take that into consideration, but it's your brand and you do have to ultimately make a decision and it's going to be a risk regardless. And going back to the bland version you kind of got to with consensus is just as much of a risk of doing something really wild or whatever direction you had in your head for it's your company.
Yeah, and I guess maybe one benefit of how noisy every channel and every market has gone is that actually we're taking less of a risk than we realize, because it's so hard to stand out anyway. If you do it and it doesn't work, only 10 people are going to see it. Whereas it used to be something where there was a bit more blowback, I think, because there was less noise. People notice your bad campaign, which is kind of liberating as much as it's frustrating. I've never looked at it like that. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, and again, I always try and adopt the kind of standpoint of someone who's trying to listen to this and think, okay, how do I apply this to my
Sure.
content? So in terms of team construction to get the best out of a kind of video AI video program and trying to incorporate that into my content, who do you find typically is using it? Is it a question of enabling everyone? Do you find you want to create like an expert within the team? How do I construct my team to get the best out of this kind of technology?
It's a good question, but I actually think it depends on like your organization and what resources you already have or don't have. Like, you've got founders creating video content who are one-man band and they need to know how to do all of it, right? Otherwise, they're going to outsource it to an agency or spend loads of money. In smaller teams, it may sit within the content team. It may sit directly with a social media manager, or you might have like a video editor, getting involved as well. With VEED specifically, the whole point of the platform is it's meant to be accessible for everyone. So I can't talk more broadly speaking if you're trying to use like Adobe Premiere Pro and you need someone who with like really, really deep video editing expertise, you're going to need a video editor in your team. The point with VEED is like, it should enable anyone to become a video editor. And that's where we've seen some great use cases where, maybe you did have an editor running a video team and that was getting expensive. And they realized actually we can just equip the social media manager. We can just equip the sales team. We can just equip the CS team. Like think about employee advocacy from that standpoint. If AI is doing the editing, you don't need to be an editing expert, right? Because you press a button and, you're recording a video on the street and all of a sudden all the noise, is removed from the background. You're not necessarily staring at the screen because you were reading from a teleprompter. You can click a button and your eyes will all of a sudden go in focus. You're not sure, accessibility is a must have. So you want to add subtitles. You press a button, it automatically transcribes it for you and adds subtitles to it. So anyone can do that. And I think when you're in bigger teams and organizations, that's where like templates and like brand kits and more advanced stuff like locking that in so people can't mess it up. Like that's what I love to talk about. Like sales team, a lot of times people aren't creating content because they're afraid it's not good enough. They're afraid it's not going to pass quality control or not brand approved. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome. I think there's two things happening with video creation for like non-video creators. One is like the cringe factor. People don't like to hear themselves talk or look at themselves back. And the second is they're not sure if it's good enough. And I think the point of AI editing stuff is like, it makes it really hard for it not to be good enough if you're using tools that are like really intuitive. So I guess the short answer to your question is the long short answer. This is our Friday afternoon brains going, Tom, is depends on your organizational size. And some teams are always going to have deep expertise, but you don't need to have deep expertise is the short answer is anyone can do it.
Yeah, no, a lot of that. Sorry, were you about to say something else?
No, I was going to say, but like where it's often sitting in terms of ownership is like in your content team, digital team, social team, kind of like in those like creative pods or social first pods.
And I guess it's working back a little bit as the leader from what your goal is and what you want, what outcome you want, right? If we're flooding social media with kind of content from all of your employee base, then it's about creating, like overcoming the confidence thing and removing a lot of the barriers. Everything you said, I feel so much, right? It's that thing of, I'm sure everyone's had this. You think, I'm going to record a video. It'll take 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute video. And then half an hour later, you've re-recorded it 12 times, pulled your hair out, and you think, fuck yeah.
Well, and that's why actually, like, we give the advice of like, just press record and go.
Yeah.
Because like, if you've never been in a video editor, there's like often, it's a timeline, right? And if you don't know how to like edit with the timeline, it's like really intimidating to go like, oh, do I've got to listen to the whole thing and then like press pause and then like find the cut thing. But now that you're editing with like a transcript and you're just like searching for the word for the thing you want to delete and you delete it and it just removes that chunk from the video, you don't need to know how to use the tools where in a way you previously needed to know. And I guess the other thing I just want to caveat is the advice that I'm giving. I'm very much speaking about like talking head video for social. There will be video needs in a business organization that I'm not referring to. If you're going to go shoot a full production for your new brand video, that is not the space that, I'm the subject matter expert in. And I definitely would recommend, to kind of speak to someone else around that advice. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the caveat. Cool. Look, let's get into some quick fires because I'm conscious we've got about 2 minutes left. And I want to actually leave enough time to get through all my quick fires this time. So first of all, and maybe this is difficult, so I'm going to caveat this with it can't be VEED or video related. What's an AI tool or use case that you really love that kind of blew you away?
So I'm saying N8N because it's I was thinking more in the context of workflows, and I was thinking more in the context of like, what's my job to be done as a marketing leader within the marketing team? And it's to enable the team to have, more productive workflows and experiment with, building different agents and opportunities, whether that's to accelerate pipeline or look at intent signals and all that sort of stuff. There's a million tools to connect it with. But that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of I've not actually been in there as much, but I hear about it all the time. It's one of the many tools on my long list of
There's a
stuff.
million things you can do, and that's why like I'm just starting to get familiar with it and like talking about the hackathon. It's like I'm imagining this is going to be a core tool that most people are going to want, or a version like a Make, or Zapier's kind of like seen it come back with these other tools to connect A plus B plus C equals the end goal that you're trying to achieve. And I think that's fantastic, because we all don't need developers now to be able to kind of achieve our goals, or have to spend a lot of money on third-party stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And I noticed one thing. One of my kind of gripes about AI technology companies has been that I think the art of product has been lost a little bit, in that people are so focused on quickly improving their product that they forget about the end user, the kind of entirety of the use case, and kind of allowing it to be stitched into workflow as well. Which is where I think one of the best skills that you can develop is to do that. Because I noticed without that, I spent so much time copying between one tool to another and downloading this and importing that. So I think it's something I could work on, actually.
I think we're only scratching the surface as marketers, right? Like, because we're not used to owning this part, but now we've been given a tool that allows us to own this part. And this is like where all the upskilling, I think, is as like when we started the episode, is probably we're gonna see it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And then another one, this is a bit of a fun one that's sometimes really difficult to answer. Let's say I gave you an unlimited budget, and the way that I always frame it is, it's like the budget request that your CEO would never be stupid enough to sign off. What would you do? What's the big bet you'd make?
I was thinking about this because you shared this question with me in advance, and I'd like to go to Cannes Lion. Do you know the Festival of Creativity? And I was thinking about it from a VEED perspective, in the sense of like, it's becoming more B2B, which I love. Like, LinkedIn's been there for the last 2 years. It's also becoming even more creator led. But, if you've never been, like, it's just, I know there's a lot of like mixed feelings about the awards themselves around creativity, which I'm not going to dig into, but from an experience perspective, and have your brand be part of that experience. Like, I think in terms of like a big ticket brand moment, like, I would just love to go wild there.
How much stock do you place in that kind of brand moment, the Super Bowl ad, the kind of, it's almost the middle finger, we're here kind of moment? Do you think
that's what it is? And like, when I started here, I remember speaking to our previous CMO, and she's like, when do you think we're like Cannes ready? That's like a question to ask yourself. And I'm like, that is when you've made it, right? Like, so not all brands can say this, or that's not the North Star for all brands. But I think from a creatively led brand, like, that very much values that risk taking in brand building, it feels like you said, a big of an FU moment. And like, last couple of years, talking about Super Bowl ads, we've seen some incredible B2B companies put their money where their mouth is. And that's probably the part of like being a marketer that, when I started out in marketing, I thought marketing was actually advertising. And then I got into B2B, and I'm like, oh, this is so not cool. Like, I'm like embarrassed to be a B2B marketer. Now I'm like, I love, for years, of course, being a B2B marketer, like the space, the community, and then to be able to do something very B2C in the B2B world, that is also the big FU to everyone who's like, oh, B2B is boring.
But because I kind of oscillate on this, do you think it's vanity, or do you think there is legitimate reason to make that kind of statement?
I think both. Like, my response is very much like it's a cool thing that I want to do as like a personal milestone. As much as saying like, we'd have to be really, really sure it's the right investment, whether it's a Super Bowl ad or something like that, for the right audience to get, what we want out of it.
Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting question. And then I guess for you, a little bit more personally now. So like, in your career, is there a skill or a trait that you have that you would say has been the biggest needle mover for you?
I would say like that example at the start of the episode where I talked about kind of like being very deliberate, that I knew I wanted this international career, like being self-defined as like culturally curious, and creating these moments that I wanted for myself. It's something now that I am where I am, I'm just like, I look back at the younger me and like, I'm proud of myself that I like put my hand up, put myself like, was brave in these situations. And so that's something that I'm like, I wouldn't be here where I am now if I didn't take those, I guess like really be forceful to put my hand up. And also like, I love what I do because I built a career around what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing. And so I think that skill set was like setting the intention and going after it.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm hearing is it's a new answer. Actually, I've not had that one before, but kind of bravery and courage to put yourself out of your comfort zone, which I think is always valuable.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not meant to sound like self-serving. I guess it's like a kind of a self-serving question to ask, but like, yeah, thinking on it, it's just something that I encourage other people to think about. Is like again, we talked about this quite a bit. Like, you are in control of your own destiny, and that's whether you're working for a shit employer and like not being treated well. Like, you do have other options, as well as like, hey, if you want to pivot or change careers, like, go and make that happen.
Yeah, and don't worry, I know we lead you down a path of self-serving there, but we're going to take you back the other way now. What was the biggest fuck up in your career?
Oh, well, it was very self-serving. So my biggest F up in my career was taking the title and the money instead of what I knew in my gut was just not the right fit. And the reason it's one of the biggest is it happened like the week/month that COVID hit. So like I like forced myself out of the job for the wrong job that wasn't for me anyway. And then, was out of work for that period of time. And looking back on it, it was like, I had a secure job. I had it, like the things that are important to you. I had a secure job. I had a supportive boss. I felt valued. I was doing work I enjoyed, and someone dangled a carrot. And I was like, I chased it, and never again will I kind of chase that title or money over what gives me joy.
Oh, that's a great way to end. Cool. Yeah, let's leave it there. I guess before I let you go, so one recommendation for everyone who's listening, whether it's like a book, a thought leader, a podcast that they should check out.
My friend Jane Sarah has a podcast called Women in B2B Marketing. I think that's what it is Women in B2B Marketing. Yeah. And she's just a lovely person. And I want to advocate, more women like showing up on camera, joining podcasts, speaking out on LinkedIn. I think this is, our voice isn't, embedded in the ecosystem, I think, enough. And she does a great job of echoing, women B2B leaders. So Jane Sarah, Women in B2B.
Awesome. Marketing. And then let's just give you a quick moment. Is there anything you'd like to plug that you're doing or the VEED's doing? I'll give you a quick chance to do that.
Thank you. I just say, like, if you haven't tried out video, you want to take that leap. My advice is honestly just start by starting. So check VEED out. If you want me to, if you want to trial or something, DM me, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're in London, we're running a marketing hackathon on content creation. We're launching a campaign of like the ultimate guide to video marketing because of AI in 2 weeks' time. We're going to host some events in the London office with a great panel. So if you're in the UK, follow along on LinkedIn, and otherwise DM me. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to meet other marketers.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to coming to the hackathon as well. I think that's a great idea to start doing that outside of just devs and technical cases. Cool. Look, Lisa, thank you very much. We're bang on time, and it's high time that both of us got a drink on a Friday afternoon. So I'll let you go, but thank you very much for joining.
I really enjoyed this. Thanks, Tom.
Good. I'm glad. And thank you everyone for listening at home. Awesome.